Right, good morning, people. How are we all today? I hope we're all well. Before we get on with this, let's have a look and see who's in. Hi, Desiree. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Lorna. Hi, Robert. Robert Bruce. Hi, Mark McLagan. George Ewan. Margaret Mackay. Hootsman. Jamie Dodger. Morning, fellow trucker. Stephen Bank here. Reagan Elite's there. Folks, Reagan Elite programme goes live right after this one. If somebody can drop the link in the comments, please. Good morning, the Scotland Effect. Good morning, Melanie. Morning, last Braveheart. Morning, Jeanette. Gilfillan. Morning, Christina. Peter M. Maria. Morning, June. Who else we got? Morning, Anna. Morning, Linda. Morning, Graham. I see the other Davies in and all. Good morning, Davey. I think we've got you all. Eddie. I think we've got you all. Just keep up. And wee birds in and all. Numbers are growing nicely. So give a few more seconds and we'll get this one underway. Morning, Alistair. Morning, Peter S. Craig. Morning, George Docherty. Good morning, Class Action. Good to have you in the audience this morning. Right, folks, we're up there the 100 mark, so let's get this one underway. It's in the truck. Davey out the truck, not home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it is 13 degrees. Clear at the moment, but the clouds building. There is rain in the forecast for this evening. And today's high is going to be 17 degrees here. The humidity is at 94 degrees. 94%. The wind is a wee bit blowy today. It's gusting up to 30 to 50 kilometres an hour, or 90 kilometres per hour, or 19 to 30 miles per hour, if you're using the old book. And the pollen count is low. And the main allergen, once again, is grass. Good morning, Mark Parker. Good morning, Sir Larry. Good morning, Kirsty. Nice to see you all funneling in the door. Right, first up this morning, folks, we have the Rancid. Oh, I better tell you the date. It's the 18th of 9th, 2025, but I'm sure you were aware of that. Anyway, first up this morning is the Rancid. And it goes on. Not proven verdict abolished. Families of victims hail MSP's vote after seeing people walk free for trial. Now, folks, when we get into this, we'll just date the new and get it out the road, shall we? The not proven verdict became totally and completely obsolete when we did away with the double jeopardy rules. If you don't know what that means, it means when you were tried, you couldn't be dragged back in front of the courts if new evidence came to light. But because we've changed that rule, not proven becomes irrelevant. Because even if you get a not guilty verdict now, and new evidence comes to light, you can be dragged back into court and tried again. And if you're found guilty and new evidence comes to light, then obviously there'll be a retrial. And you're either found guilty again or set free. So not proven isn't really necessary now. Although it was a nice wee quirk, something I quite liked. But the idea of not proven was to give a third option so that if new evidence came to light, the person who the case was not proven against at that point in time could be dragged back into court and retried. Well, we can do that without the not proven verdict now. So it's no longer necessary. Although I did like it, I have to say. But as I say, up until we changed the double jeopardy rules, not proven was necessary. It isn't necessary now. All right, next up, we've got the Herald. We'll stick it up, but it runs in the same story. And I don't really have much more to say on it, actually, because I have just stated it. So up with the Herald. Move to scrap not proven verdict approved. Now, the vote was approved by 71 votes to 46. So there's either 5 abstentions or absences, because only 128 will be voting, because the 129th is the presiding officer. Okay. Now, there's also been some other changes. Now, the other changes to how a verdict is arrived at. Now, a verdict used to be arrived at by a simple majority, but now it's going to be a 2/3 majority. Now, that means 10 of the 15 in Scottish juries would need to come to a conclusion together. So it might mean that jury trials take a wee bit longer when the jury goes out to come to an end, because the 2/3 majority thing will be a lot harder to achieve than a simple majority. But it's new safeguards, and also there's going to be a victims commissioner, appointed, elected, whatever, and they'll look after the interests of victims of crime. Okay, so let's take that one down, get shot here, if we can find it. And then we'll get the Scotsman up. So next up, we'll get the Scotsman. And needless to say, with it being a Scottish paper, it's on the same story. Okay, and as you can see, the big orange man baby is in England. Okay, but the momentous vote hailed as not proven, verdict scrapped. As I say, it's no longer necessary as an option. But I quite liked it. Quite quirky. But as I say, up until we changed the double jeopardy laws, it was very necessary to have not proven. Because up until then, if you'd been found not guilty and new evidence came to light, you couldn't be dragged back into court if you were found not guilty. Not proven, you could be dragged back into court. But because we changed the rules on double jeopardy, then it's no longer necessary. All right, so we'll get rid of the Scotsman and move on. After the Scotsman, we have the Daily Fail. And because it's claiming to be the Daily Fail of Scotland, it is on the same story. Okay, victory for campaigners after century-old jury option axed in SNP justice reform, but critics warn over risk of wrongful conviction. There's always a risk of wrongful conviction, no matter what the legal system is, whether it be in Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, America, anywhere in the world, there's always a chance. And when there's a trial, that there will be a miscarriage of justice. That's just the way it is. Anyway, the not proven verdict has been around in Scotland since 1728. But as I say, it become no longer necessary when we changed the double jeopardy laws. But that's it. There isn't much more to say on that, folks. You know, there's also changes to how parole boards operate. There's changes to the children's panel system in this latest justice reform bill as well. But there's a lot in it. There's a lot to unpack in it. But as I'm not likely to need it, I probably won't read it. There's enough information in the general press for people to get the basis of it. Okay, so let's get rid of the fail. And after the fail, we have the Times. So we'll get the Times up. And the Times has, "We're kin," King tells Trump. And you know what, Charles? You're right. You are kin. You, your brother, him, you're all fucking paedophiles. There's a reason why Jimmy Savile was Chuck fucking Sausage Finger's best pal. Because Jimmy Savile was the UK's version of Eckstein. He was a provider. So, Charlie might feel akin to fucking Trump. Well, by the way, his mother was Scottish, but we don't feel akin to the fucker. But Charlie, the sexual deviant, Trump, sexual deviant, Andy, sexual deviant. They're all akin. They're all akin. A bunch of child molesting fucking wastes of spaces. Right, let's get rid of that. We are kin. You fucking might be kin to him. But we certainly aren't, Chuck. Right, next up we have to turn the page. Pardon me. Nah, next up we've got the scum. So we don't put the scum up, as you know. So let's see what the scum's got for us today. It says a special bond. Praises UK at banquet as band plays 007. They don't get the optics of this, do they? We've got austerity been going on now for fucking 17 years or something like that. 15 years. People are dying of hunger. People are using food banks. And here we have the monarch spending our money like fucking water on a paedophile president. A man who's unfit to hold public office. Saying that, the same applies to fucking Charlie. Unfortunately, he doesn't hold a public office. He's head of state. And he's also the sovereign in England. Where all the people doing there shouting about sovereignty don't understand that they're subjects. And that they don't have any fucking sovereignty. And what little parliament, whatever sovereignty Westminster claims to have, it doesn't really hold it at all. Charlie lends him it every 5 years. Prior to that, his mother lent it to them every 5 years. Prior to that, her father lent it to them every 5 years, going all the way back to Victoria. The Parliament's no sovereign, and the people are no sovereign down that road. That's Chuck. He's sovereign. Always cracked me up during Brexit when they were shouting sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. Try to explain to them that you don't have any sovereignty, you're a subject. You live in a monarchy. Didn't they wash for them? They just don't understand it. They don't understand their own constitutional arrangements. It's unfucking real. Right, after the scum, we have the Loony Rag, the Express, I believe, so let's stick it up. And the Loony Rag, the Express, of course, because it's an English rag. It's on my respect for you in Britain, says Trump. Trump respects nothing. Absolutely nothing. Trump represents chaos. But that gets funny as we go in. Further in. In fact, it gets funnier next, actually, when the eye comes up. So let's get the eye up. And we'll see what's on that this morning. This is a fucking stoter. Diplomat King urges Trump to stand up to Putin's tyranny. Right. And it says, Charles calls on peacemaker president to support Ukraine. Peacemaker? He's made no peace with no fucker. He's claimed to have made peace. He's actively sponsoring a fucking genocide, for fuck's sake. You want to call him a peacemaker? Wow. Wow. Talk about fucking loonies. Do you know about the Guardian's got some harsh truth in it today? Some harsh truth in it. So when we get its headline, it should be interesting. I think next up's a metal. We'll find out now. Aye, next up's a metal, so let's get it up. Firing through this morning. And the Metro has Trump and circumstance. And what does it say up there? Dazzling royal show. But just for US press. And it goes on to criticise the fact that the general public have been locked out of Windsor. And the president's being shielded for the protests that are going on at his presence. But dazzling show, millions spent. You know, what's it got? The cost of this visit, unbelievable. Thanks, John. Thank you very much. You're a star. Give my best to Edith, will you? So Trump and circumstances instead of pomp and ceremony. The circumstance bit's interesting because that becomes clearer what the circumstances are when we get to the Guardian. I should have put the FT up this morning, but we don't get the FT in our paper reviews. I could have got it for English paper reviews, of course. Right, here we go. The Guardian. It's got a very interesting headline. And I'm going to break it down for you folks. It says PM banks on 150 billion investment to placate critics of Trump's visit. So there you have it. All this pleading and a pomp and ceremony is because Little England's fucking broke and the bankrupted Wales and Northern Ireland along with them. Now it depends on the broad shoulders of the Scots and their resources to keep Little Britain afloat. But what's interesting about that is that tells us that the PM is willing to sell out those British values he tells us we should all fucking have for money. 150 billion of investment, which will never fucking make it across the water. That I can assure you. The nuclear deal will come to nothing and the tech deals will come to nothing. But that shows you the sort of slime balls that are in that parliament down there. They're willing to sell out the so-called values they say that we should all hold dear for fucking money. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. So there you have it. Your sovereign and has appointed Prime Minister selling the UK out. UK fire sale. Come and get it, Trump. No be long he gets his hands in the NHS and all. Yeah, fuck. So that's a translation of this headline. PM and sovereign sell out country. That's England. Unbelievable. Let's take that down and we'll get a national up because that's quite interesting today. Because it goes in the story that's been ignored by everybody else, but this is where we get to civil liberties being stripped away again. The National. And the Nationals tells us, as led by donkeys, protesters are arrested. It's asking, is sharing this image a crime? Well, led by donkeys went a wee bit further than just putting that image on the side of Windsor Castle. They ran an 8-minute documentary, which he highlighted Trump's ties with Epstein. But for doing it, they got arrested. Peaceful protest, no violence, no vandalism, no damage. Apparently freedom of speech is dead in England. But I'll speak for Scotland here today. No, sharing that image isn't a fucking crime. Calling Trump a pedo isn't a crime. Calling King Chuck a pedo isn't a crime. Calling his brother Andy a pedo isn't a crime. The mere fact that these three pedos haven't been prosecuted is down to wealth. And in the case of Chuck and his brother, it's because none of the services will get near it with a badge pull. Even if we all went and made a collective complaint to police, it would be fucking ignored. When they talk about deep state in America, there isn't a deep state here in the UK. It's quite out in the open. You got enough money, you're above the law. If you're the sovereign, you're above the law. If you're in Parliament, parliamentary privilege, you're above the fucking law. One rule for them, and another rule for the rest of us. And what they say is go, whether we like it or no. And if that means ending freedom of speech for them to maintain control, that's exactly what they're going to fucking do. In fact, we know that's what they're going to do. We're watching it unfold in front of our eyes. And down at the bottom here, although you can't see it, it tells us that, I think it's Liberation Scott, that are at the UN the day in Geneva, pleading Scotland's case to be decolonised. They're in the wrong fucking place. They should never have went anywhere near the United Nations, because we tried that route in 1972 to 75. People must have short fucking memories or don't know their history. They will get referred to the European Court of Human Rights as where they should have took it. Because as a collective, we are being denied the right of self-determination. And as David and I have already pointed out, the Supreme Court doesn't have the jurisdiction to rule our constitutional position, because it's tied up in an international treaty. That requires an international court. The UN is not an international court, and they're going to be told to go away. They'll be listened to politely, they'll be told to be given an answer at some point in the future, and the answer will come and tell them to go to the European Convention and the European Court of Human Rights, which is where they should have went in the first place, because collectively our human rights are being denied. And that is the right to self-determination, as an individual or as a collective. This stuff's no rocket science. But as we know, the Scottish Constitutional Convention tried going the UN route before and were referred to the Council of Europe. The same thing's going to happen again. Simple as that. Because we've all seen every politician asked if this was a voluntary union say aye. It's a voluntary union where they control their right to self-determination. That's an abuse of human rights. That belongs in the courts. It doesn't belong at the United Nations, where it is declared that the UK is a voluntary state. So they're in the wrong place, and I don't hold much hope for it. Because that's just the way it is. We are being held from making a decision on our constitutional future. That's denying us our right to self-determination. Simple as that. Right, after the National, we've got the Tory graph. So let's get the Tory graph up and see what fucking nonsense it's got for us a day. And the Tory graph has it's still pushing for an end of human rights in England. One in, one out, deal blocked by Home Office backed charity. Now, this charity, it's bail for migrants. They object to detention centres for these people, because they could end up in detention centres for years because there's nowhere to fucking send them after they've been denied their application for asylum. So they just end up sitting in detention centres for years, basically prison for nothing. And that's what the bail for migrants is all about. They shouldn't be held in detention centres. Yep, if you need to track them, make them come to a police office once or twice a week. If they don't show up, go on the hunt. But detention centres are basically prisons. Simple as that. But as I say, with the Liberation Scott thing, I don't hold out much hope. I don't. I would be very surprised if it went anywhere in the UN. And even if it did, and they got the vote through, somebody sponsored us and got the vote through in the floor of the United Nations, you'll bet your arse that the UK calls it into the Security Council and vetoes it. Yeah, okay. Right, that just leaves us with one headline, and that's the Star. So we'll stop sharing that and we'll get the star up. Keep your wig on, Orange Man baby. It's a bit blowy. Heir to the throne. Aye, Trump, heir to the throne of the American president. You know, not just that they based a pair of ugly old men. They've got the same hair. There must be something to do with the paedophile setting. Absolutely mental. No, I don't know. Alistair, if there's any boffins, it's not on the front page, mate. Sorry. But we need to be writing to the Star asking where the fucking boffins went. Anyway, I believe because the university's cutting back, a lot of the boffins have been laid off. Hey, Stephen, you don't think the UK is allowed to say? They're not allowed to say on our collective right to self-determination. That's why it has to go to court. Here today, gone tomorrow. Sorry. Aye. Because basically, what we're talking about here is Westminster is breaching our human rights as a collective, the right to self-determination, the right to ask ourselves about whether or not we want to remain part of this union. But the UN's not a place for that. That'd be the European Court on Human Rights. But hey, anyway, what does it say down the bottom there? King tells Trump beware of sword and walk in front of monarch again. So basically, Trump walked in front of Charlie and Charlie says, you see, I'm wearing a fucking sword. Basically telling him, do it again, I'll run you through. Which of course he wouldn't do. But hey, lot of foot. And hey, say best of luck to Liberation Scott. More iron the fire possible. But when we talk about this stuff, I mean, you don't need to believe me. Pop on to James Kelly at Scott Goes Pops YouTube channel. He'll explain it as well. The UK is a voluntary union as far as the United Nations is concerned. So therefore, our human rights are being collectively denied by central government in Westminster and by the Supreme Court, which didn't have jurisdiction over an international treaty. The place for this to go is the European Court of Human Rights. And that's what they should have been all along. But David and I have been saying that for the last couple of years, since the court judgment. Okay, so we're going to have to put up with a man baby battering around in the privacy of Windsor Palace, or Windsor Castle, whatever the fuck they call it, for the next couple of days. And they tell me Melania demanded a separate suite for the big orange man baby. And it's big news in America. Apparently everybody thinks Melania is about to divorce him because I don't think she wants to nurse him in his old age. Right. That's it for this morning, folks. We'll be back tomorrow for the last one of the paper roundup for the week. And David and I will be back this afternoon to talk about some of the things that's going on. Okay. So look after yourselves. See you in a few hours. Got a couple of things to get on with this morning. So I'll catch you later. Checkers Trump is that, David, is it? Well, that's where he fucking belongs when he's finished visiting the king. No, I don't blame her for wanting to dump him. Thank you, Maria. Right, see you all this afternoon, 4 o'clock, where David and I will talk about some of the other things that are going on the planet. Probably the Freedom Flotilla and the 16 nations that have warned Israel to keep their paws off it. We'll probably talk a wee bit more about some of the things that have been going on here in Scotland and further afield. So we'll see you then. Bye for now. He's leaving the night, that's good.